Hello, artsy friends. This is my second composition notebook art journal series. Today I am starting out with a masterboard. So a masterboard is a mixed media collage technique used to, a lot of times people use them to create artist trading cards or to add to your junk journal. So I am just playing around with it today. Started with a piece of 12 by 12 cardstock, just from my old stash. I still have a lot of scrapbook paper from bygone days. But then I'm just going to collect different interesting collage fodder materials such as book pages and music sheets. So the cheapest place to find these type of things is like the Goodwill bins, the outlet where they, you kind of dumpster dive through the trash there. Or if you just, libraries have magazines that often get cycled out. This is a 1991 alternative energy source book. So it was like some kind of like catalog for, I don't know, but I happened to open it up to this page on toilets. So I thought that was kind of funny. And I was like, oh yeah. So even though most of the collaging does get covered up because you paint over it and stencil over it and mark over it, it's just kind of fun playing around with it, or like finding interesting things. And I do always want to have a little bit of my background collage design showing through. I mean, that first piece was solid, so I'm starting with the more solid, and then I'm going to layer on top of those the more detailed collage pieces, if that makes sense. So I like having the exposed tear too, to give it a little texture and roughness. And when you start, I mean, it's really just, just kind of moving it around the page. There's not really too much rhyme or reason to it. Other than when I start layering each layer, I try to overlap a little bit, and I vary the text if I'm using text pages. So some of them go vertical, some of them go horizontal, and yeah, you can kind of see how things just evolve. So this is definitely a stage that you really don't need to overthink it. You're not going to really see a whole lot of detail from the collage phase, but I'd encourage you not to be so focused on getting to the outcome and the product that you don't enjoy this phase. So think of the process a little bit like parenting. We hope that when we raise our children, they'll be strong, healthy adults, but we don't want to rush through every stage. We want to enjoy every stage. So like this bottom layer that I'm working on is very much the like baby stage. And a lot of it, will seem like almost insignificant by the time we get done, because it's just so foundational, and you don't necessarily see all the details of the early years. And then as we grow, we just add layers to life, and we don't always know what circumstances are going to bring about change in us. We don't know what the end's going to look like, but we just take it one layer at a time. I just thought of something hilarious. Here we're talking about the metaphor of like raising children, and I am putting little toilets. So this is the potty training stage. And now that our art baby is potty trained, we can put some clothes on her. And I'm starting with some acrylic paint, and with acrylic is water-based, so you can always thin it out with water. If like right here, the coverage is a little bit too much, because I want some of the details of like the floor plans and the words and the things to show through. So I just took paper towel while I had it wet, and then I wetted my brush a little bit, so as I'm continuing, it's a little thinner. This is Anita's brand Island Blue. Okay, now I'm going to add some lime. I can almost smell the lime. I like these tropical bright colors. Now I'm adding some folk art color shift metallic purple flash. And I love this little paint set because it is shiny and metallic, and I like shiny things. Okay, now it's time for some stenciling. Ooh, what could we add to our metaphor. Okay, maybe this is like the tween years, you know, when kids are first starting to like experiment with like trying to do their hair and makeup, you know, early teens. They're like, ooh, I'm embellishing myself. Check it out. Oh, I don't know how far I can carry this metaphor. Okay, that music is like putting me to sleep. I always try to either like stick with like, ooh, high energy music and make it consistent throughout the video, or like mellow, chill music. That was a little bit too chill. Anyway, so now I'm bringing in my contrast with black. And this brush is like kind of old and the bristles are starting to splay out a little bit. So I love how it looks like little like furry pom-poms or something when I use it on the page. And then I used an eraser from a pencil to make some dots. Although this eraser is so low that like the metal part around it is sticking out a little bit. So at first it wasn't doing too well. It was more like making circles. But as I figured it out, if I globbed a lot more paint on it, then they were more pronounced. So as you move around the page with your stencils and your mark making, I really like to overlap like the dots that are going over the squiggles that are going over the little pom-poms, and the stencils are overlapping different colors that I painted in. And so I think that you'll be more pleased with the results. I think there's a tendency at first to like stay color in the lines, you know, like a good little kindergartner when we start working with like collaging and mixed media. And so what happens is we like have more of a patchwork than a cohesive piece of art that just kind of all meshes together. So that's one thing that you can keep in mind if you want to. But hey, I'm not trying to tell you how to do your art. You do you. You do art however you want, because it's all about, you know, enjoying the process. Okay, I'm going to try to find some peppier music now. Okay, now that I have used quite a bit of my silver Posca pen to create all these little shiny bits, I'm taking a thin black Posca marker and creating some thin lines. So that's another way you can add interest to a page, is to vary the width of your strokes of your mark making. Oh, did you like my disco person? Okay, so I am really happy with the way my master board is looking. I have a few little elements sticking off the page, and at this point I haven't decided if I'm going to trim those or not. So let's take our analogy a little further, okay? Let's say our children have just now graduated, they've become adults, and now we're kind of launching them out into the unknown. So we're cutting into the back, the blank side. We're no longer in control, okay? And they're gonna go through several stages of life, and each little part of life is going to be different, and it's going to contain elements from their childhood and what you've taught them and your values and what they believe, and also just their own unique personality styles. And it's neat because every chapter of life is a little different and unique, and isn't it beautiful? I've also always appreciated randomness with intention. Does that make sense? So like, I love the beauty and simplicity of nature and how in one sense it appears random, but look at that. Look how that cut made it right on those X's. So it cut the stitch in half. Ooh, I love that one. I like the waves. I didn't even realize when I was making those black thin lines how they complemented that stencil in the background. And I'm moving it around so you can see just the texture and the reflection from the metallics. And this is a really, really fun thing. I could just stop right here and be happy, but I am kind of like one of those people who's very thorough. So if I'm starting a project, I usually I want to stick with it. So I'm going to incorporate it into my composition art journal. And I'm picking a page. This sticker came off of the bottom of a chair that I bought. We bought a dining set used several years ago, and just the other day I reached down under one of the chairs and this sticker was hanging off, and so I ripped it out and I slapped it in my art journal, and I thought, oh, I'll do something with that maybe. But I kept looking at it going and having no inspiration, so I am just going to just keep it as a background there. And I've realized I am going to paint the whole background black because I want my pieces to jump off the page. Oh, and you might have noticed I'm a little bit ADD. I have a tendency to get easily distracted. Squirrel! And I was starting to say about nature, about the randomness of nature, how it appears random, yet where a seed scatters and falls to the ground and sprouts a little weed or a little flower or a tree or something, but yet it's like there's perfect order, when the nasty briars haven't taken over, then nature is just like this, I don't know, this is beautiful, perfect randomness. So I like that aspect of doing this message board thing where you create something intentionally and it has order and beauty, and yet when you flip it over and blindly cut into them, you don't know what kind of little miniature piece of artwork that you're creating with its own composition and its own features, and they're all just a little bit different and a little bit unique, and so I'm just loving it. Anyway, so I am rounding off the corners because I want to. And then it's interesting because I have 12 pieces, but only room for 8. So I'm kind of just arranging them. And one thing I noticed was the vertical and horizontal dashes of the silver marking is what I was kind of using as I didn't want to, I wanted to vary them across the page. So it's horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical. And I have this tendency to point out when I do things I didn't like or make mistakes. So I'm not going to, but I'll say there was one card I might have flipped over. Yeah, but I didn't. So it's okay. And part of the art journaling process is letting go of that perfection or wanting, regret. Let's call that regret, when I wish I would have glued this piece here instead or done this a little bit differently, but it's okay. We just move on. But I did a little heartbeat kind of zigzag lines on the top and then kind of balanced it out. Well, I guess I started on the bottom and then I put it on the top. I'm looking at it, and some of the cards are kind of buckling because I just used a regular glue stick. So I'm going to use a little Mod Podge and try to stick those down a little flatter. And then I got some heavy books and pressed them down on top of my page. And then I just went and had dinner and then came back, and look, it's nice and flat. So that looks better. So looking at the overall composition of the page, the center line just seemed a little too thick for me. And so I thought, a good way to fill it in would be with a quote. And since I'm using silver as accent, I got a very thin lined silver marker. And I wanted to find a quote that kind of reflected my thoughts about the uncertainty of life, or the mystery, or the unknown, the random. So I found this quote by Bob Goff. Embrace uncertainty. Some of the most beautiful chapters in our lives won't have a title until much later. So isn't that perfect way to tie in even our analogy of, these chapters are like phases of our adult life where we go through college and career and finding a spouse and having children of our own and all of these life chapters. And there's a lot of uncertainty, but we should embrace it. Love it. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me today and watching my process. I hope that it inspires you, and I hope that you go and have a wonderful, blessed day.